بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أهلا وسهلا بكم جميعا. اليوم حابة يكون في حوار مع شخص قريب جدا من قلبي. هو دكتور جويل إيفانز. الدكتور جويل متخصص في نوع مهم جدا وجديد من الطب، اسمه الفانكشنال ميديسن. هناك الكثير من الأشياء التي تستحق أن نعرفها على هذا النوع من الطب. سأعرفكم أكثر على دكتور جويل لنستفيد ونستقي من المعلومات الموجودة لديه، وسأعرفكم أكثر على شخصه وعلى كيف يمكن الاستفادة من هذا النوع من الطب. دكتور جويل, welcome to our little chat. It's great to have you with us.
And it is so great to be here. I'm so excited to spread the word about this new kind of medicine.
Exactly. Everyone now wants to know, what is functional medicine, Dr. Joel?
So functional medicine really is a new way to think about medicine, because we've always thought of medicine before as diagnosing disease and treating disease. And what functional medicine does is it looks at how the body functions, because we believe that the body, when it doesn't function well, leads to people not feeling well, and ultimately from not feeling well to developing different diseases and illnesses.
Understood. Now, we have been living all our lives thinking that there's only one kind of medicine. And of course, the alternative medicine, which we'll talk about later. But the traditional medicine is what we've been living by. And when we go to the doctor, if 5 of us have flu, we take the same exact medication, regardless of how each one of us reacts to this kind of medication. How is functional medicine different from traditional medicine with regards to the intake that we put in our bodies?
That's a wonderful question. But I first want to get an important point out there, which is that functional medicine works with conventional medicine. So it's not one or the other. What it really is a wise use of conventional medicine, because we put that through the lens of function. And when we look at the lens of function, the most important thing is causation, or what is the imbalance that's causing the problem with the function. So if we take something very simple and common like depressed mood, in conventional medicine, you come in, you talk about your mood, and if you're lucky, you talk about it just for a couple of minutes. I mean, you do, right? Most of the time it's only, how is your mood? You say, I'm depressed, and boom, right away they write a prescription.
Yep.
But from the functional medicine perspective, there are so many different causes of that same problem. So for example, depressed mood can be caused by not enough B vitamins, by eating too much fish in the sense that you're getting mercury from too much tuna, for example, which can lead to depression. Maybe for people that have sensitivity to gluten, it's too much gluten. Maybe it's stress. So there can also be side effects of different medications that can lead to depression. It can also be not only just too much fish with the mercury, but maybe too little fish, so you're not getting the omega-3 essential fatty acids. So what a practitioner of functional medicine will do, once he finds out or she finds out that your mood is a little depressed, will try to find out what are those different causes, and then come up with the unique and personalized intervention to help you get better, as opposed to just saying, you're depressed, here's an antidepressant.
And now you use the keyword, personalized. We're all different. We all I'm one of your patients, and I pride myself to have been with you for a couple of years now. And I really salute you for helping me a lot through tough times. And I know that you had to do a thorough investigation with me before you started telling me what to do and what not. So the key to functional medicine is finding out everything about the patient. This takes a long time, does it not?
It takes time. It takes time because we want to know everything about you. And the reason we want to know is not only so that we can have a better partnership as we work together, but knowing how you feel in every aspect of your life allows us to figure out where these imbalances may be coming from, because what we want to do is find out the root causes. And if you don't spend time, you can't find out the root causes or the initial causes of these problems with function. So for example, I want to know how you're sleeping. I want to know what you're eating. I want to know about relationships. I want to know about stress. I want to know if you're feeling connected or you're feeling lonely and isolated. Because knowing all of those things helps me to identify these imbalances. So for example, if I find out that you're stressed, I immediately know that you are potentially inflamed. And inflammation is a process that is affecting almost every chronic disease. So I want to know if you're stressed, and it affects blood pressure and cardiac function. It affects hormones. It affects your ability, believe it or not, to eliminate toxic chemicals. It affects the brain function and cognitive ability and forgetfulness. It affects mood. It affects energy, where it can make you feel fatigued. So we need to know all of these things. And that's only through an in-depth conversation.
Understood. Now, food played a pivotal role in your treatments. I know that you discovered that I had gluten intolerance, and you completely changed my diet, and it helped out a lot with many things in my life. Now, I know that you've always told me that the food plays a very big role in our daily well-being, and people are not really focusing on the intake that they're having and the problems that we have with the fast food, with the processed foods, with the foods that are infused with the blah, blah, blah. It really takes its toll on our bodies.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because when people think about food, I think the important message here that it involves more than just what you eat. It also involves how you eat. And if we start with how you eat, the best way to eat is with people that you like. So not all of us can always be surrounded by people that we like when we eat. But if you're not going to be surrounded by people that you like when you eat, try to then eat alone, where you can focus and pay attention to the act of eating. Because focused attention on eating is something we call mindful eating. And mindful eating improves digestion. And it does this by increasing the number of enzymes you make so that you can digest and absorb the nutrients from your food. it increases the amount of time that you chew, because some of us are so busy that we're eating while we're doing something, we forget to chew and we swallow after 2 or 3 bites. The best way, me too, me too. But the best way to eat is to chew your food until it's liquid. Now, not all of us will do that. That's what I would say is a lot to ask of somebody. But if they can do that, let's say with their family at night, 1 or 2 nights a week, that everybody just chews their food until it's liquid, they'll notice the flavors come out so much stronger. There'll be less indigestion. And of course, they'll be absorbing their nutrients better. So this mindfulness, and if it is part of your culture or belief or religion to pray before you eat, that's a very good thing to do, because that also increases your ability to digest your food well. So praying over your food is a good thing to do. Chewing rather, until it's liquid. And that's what we call mindful eating. So that's part of the how you eat. And the next thing, and then as I said, being surrounded by people you like, families that eat dinner together. And it's very hard with today's modern family life. But if you can do that as often as you can, kids do better in school. They're better behaved. The whole family dynamic is improved. So you want to eat together as a family whenever possible with people that you like, because you don't want to be stressed while you're eating. You don't want to get into an argument while you're eating, because that makes you produce all of these stress hormones, which have the opposite effect. It decreases your ability to absorb nutrients from your food. It decreases optimal digestion. So you want to eat with people you like in a mindful way, pray if you can, be with your family, and that's the how to eat. The next thing, before we get the what to eat, so it's how to eat and then when to eat, because there's all of this new science out there about fasting and what we call time-restricted eating. And is that good or is that bad? And what I would say is that time-restricted eating, which is when you eat in a smaller window, is a good thing. Now, I would start in a very simple way, which is allowing 3 hours between your last food intake and when you go to sleep. And that's very hard in many places where people eat dinner very, very late. So if that's the culture where people eat dinner late and you can't do anything about it, we accept that. But then what we do is we work in reverse and we say, well, then when you wake up, you can't have breakfast right away. So what you want to do, if possible, is wait 12 hours from when you last had food to when you have breakfast. So if you stopped eating at 10 o'clock at night, you try not to have anything before 10 o'clock in the morning.
Understood.
And that's a way to start. Now, if we're trying to lose weight, then we compress the numbers of hours that we eat a little more. So we say, well, maybe we can, instead of doing it 12 hours of eating and 12 hours not eating, or 12 hours on, 12 hours off, we might say, let's do it 10 hours of a window of eating and 14 hours where we don't eat. So then in the morning, you don't start until noon, and then you go until 10 o'clock. So,
but it is a good thing.
It is a good thing. It is a good thing if you can restrict the number of hours that you're eating. because that allows the digestive system to rest and recalibrate. It allows the hormones, like insulin, to rest and recalibrate. We used to think, oh, eat every 3 hours. You want to always have food in your system. We've changed our thinking on that. So that's the when to eat. So we discussed how to eat, we discussed when to eat, and now let's talk about what to eat. And the what to eat, people are always told, don't eat this, don't eat that. Psychologically, that's harder to follow than saying this is what you should eat. So I'll start by saying this is what you should eat. And then if you just eat what you should, you don't have enough interest in eating the things that you shouldn't eat, because there's only so much food that you can consume. So if you can consume a ton of vegetables, you're good. And by vegetables, I mean things that don't have, white starch in them, like not a lot of rice, not a lot of pasta, not a lot of bread, right? We're talking about vegetables with color. Now, cauliflower is a white vegetable, and that's a good thing for you, right? It actually has a lot of compounds that help protect against different cancers. So it actually helps eliminate hormones, eliminate estrogen. So cauliflower is one of those white things that are good, much better for you than a lot of white potatoes or a lot of white rice or a lot of pasta. So you want to eat a lot of vegetables. Now, how much? Well, if you think of a plate, the way we do it now, you usually have a big piece of protein, and that's the main thing that you're eating. It's going to be all, whether it be a big piece of beef, chicken, whatever, or fish. What we like to say is flip it a little bit so that you have at least half the plate being those vegetables. Some would even say 3/4 of the plate should be those vegetables. And then, a 4-ounce or 6-ounce piece of protein to being the maximal amount of protein. Now we're beginning to think that maybe we need more protein in our diet. And so, maybe you can have a 6 or 8-ounce, or 10-ounce portion of protein, but it should be a healthy protein. And a healthy protein would be fish or chicken, or if you're going to have beef, ideally, if you can get grass-fed, chicken, you want your chickens to be, free range, and so on. So if you're eating that way and you're drinking a lot of water, right? So you want to have 1 ounce per kilo of body weight per day for sure. If you're drinking water, you actually don't want to drink it with your meal. Now, some people may find that very difficult, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. But just know that when you eat without drinking, your body digests your food better, because drinking lots of fluids or liquids dilutes the enzymes, and the enzymes are what you need to digest your food and absorb your food. So you don't want to drink a lot. I'm not saying you're not allowed to drink, but some people, and I'm actually very guilty of this, I'm so busy, I'm not always drinking during the day. So when I sit down to eat, that's when I drink.
That's what we remember.
Exactly. Yeah. So I know that that's not the best thing. So I do my best. And that's the truth about all these recommendations. It's not yes or no, or on and off, or everything or nothing. It's you just try to do your best.
Yes.
And it's all about having information, trying to do your best, and then not being critical of yourself, because this negative self-talk, being, critical of yourself, isn't healthy either. And you just have to bless your intention and just say, I will always just try. And just like I always tell my kids, all I want you to do is do your best. And if you do your best, then I'm okay. You have to say that same thing to yourself. just
Sometimes it's very difficult for us to acknowledge that and to be at ease with oneself. It's like I'm fat, I'm fat, I'm fat. No, I'm fit, I'm fit, I'm fit. And eventually you will become fit.
Right. But you don't try to lie to yourself and say you're fit if you really are deconditioned. What you say is, I'm here and I've done my best. I've tried all my life to, take better care of myself. And I've had my reasons why I haven't been able to. And now I'm making a conscious effort to try a little harder and to try again. And I just want to try my best every day. And then if you do daily meditation or daily prayer, ask for strength, either from within or from God, to give you the strength to be able to take care of yourself better. And try one little thing at a time. So you would say, maybe today I will try to chew my food just once, one meal, to chew my food till it's liquid. Or maybe I'll try today to go 12 hours. And it's those small incremental things which can give you a victory. And then if you can do it, you can go to bed at night and say, wow, I did that. And if I did this one thing today, I should be able to at least repeat that same thing tomorrow. And then when I'm ready, I can try for two things.
Yes. One step at a time.
That's it. One step at a time.
One of the things that really fascinates me about your work is when there are conditions in the world that you help with functional medicine, and maybe we discuss the topic of COVID and how people really, really suffered during that time, be it with the vaccinations or getting the COVID and recovering. It's been tough for all of us. Now, how did you help out with the COVID?
I think that the thing about COVID is that information is the way to minimize the damage caused by COVID. And so I have been in the position of Chief of Medical Affairs for Institute for Functional Medicine, and actually led the projects for teaching doctors and also outreach to the world on COVID. And people can still get some of that information at the IFM website, which is ifm.org/COVID. And the most important piece about COVID is that the damage was, number one, from the virus, but also from the isolation. Because isolation is really, really bad for people. And we know through studies that losing social connection and feeling isolated and feeling alone is as bad for the body as being overweight and having high blood pressure and high cholesterol combined. So social isolation is horrible. In fact, when I first started seeing that data, I almost wanted to write a book on it, because that's that's how important social isolation is, and in terms of bad health. So we all became isolated in COVID. And that still happens a little bit when people are now working from home because their offices have shut down. And, like for me, for example, most of my work is remote. And I miss, going to the office and working with people one-on-one. So I've become more isolated by not having that. And then what do I do in return? I mean, because of that, is I make sure to stay in regular contact with my social circle. So I just don't call when I think about it. I make sure that I'm always having regular calls. I'm meeting people regularly for meals, because I have to compensate for the fact that I do so much remote and virtual work. So COVID has created social isolation. The other thing about COVID is that most people don't know, but when I say this, they just nod their head and they go, oh, this makes sense, is the healthier you are before you're exposed to the virus, the less likely you are to get COVID. And if you get COVID, you're likely to have a better and less severe infection with COVID and less likely to get chronic or long COVID. So everybody says, yes, that makes sense, but it's not what we say top of mind, or not in everyone's mind, because people, even with COVID, don't do what they can to take care of themselves. So though people may, let's say, take some vitamins, and we'll go through the vitamins that are good for COVID, they'll take vitamins with one hand, and if they're diabetic, have a croissant in the other, and not realize that having that croissant and ruining their blood sugar makes them more likely to get sick and die from COVID. And so if I had to choose between a diabetic taking supplements and a diabetic lowering their blood sugar, I want that diabetic to lower their blood sugar. So people don't behave that way because it's not explained to them in a strong enough message through public health, etc. It's mentioned as a single sentence. It's always overlooked. And it's also the natural tendency that people want to know the supplements that they should take. And when you think about, the COVID virus and how it binds in the heart and all these places where there are what we call the ACE2 receptors, you don't want to have a lot of ACE2 receptors in the body. And those receptors are, in the heart and the lungs. So you want your heart and your lungs to be as healthy as possible. So if you're a smoker, that's not a good thing for a respiratory virus. So you want to decrease your smoking, or eliminate it. So these are the common sense things that I think are very important.
Even if they're common sense, the thing is they overlook them. They're just used to what they do, and they do it. And then they say, oh, my immunity is down. Well, it's down because of the trail.
Right. Yeah. And stress decreases immunity, right? I mean, think about it. We all know that when we're stressed, we get sick, right? There are studies that show that if you're stressed, when you're studying for an exam, around exam times, college students get sick, and, these messages are overlooked, which is why it's so good that you are helping to promote this message because you're a trusted authority, a trusted source of information. So people can say, you know what, I am going to take care of myself. And that benefits me in the long run. It benefits my family because I'll be around longer. It benefits my friends because I'll be able to be a good friend. It benefits my country because I'll be a good citizen. And it benefits my immune system. And so there are just all these reasons that we want to take care of ourselves, right? We want to be able to be productive. We want to be able to be helpful because deep down, all of us want to help our country, society, the world, our friends, our family. And we can't do that if we're ill and need to be taken care of. We want to be able to take care of people, not be taken care of by people.
Couldn't have put it better. Question. We've spoken of the mindfulness, the food, when to eat, how to eat, and we spoke of how to take care of ourselves. We now want to know part of taking care of ourselves, the supplements. Now everyone goes into the pharmacy and off the counter, and we start choosing maybe this. And I know people who take over 20 pills a day, thinking that this would make them healthy. What do you say about this?
Well, what I would say is, I will answer your question, but the way to look at supplements is that it should be personalized. So what I will say is, I will give you a list of supplements now. I will explain why I think they're good, but that's different from me saying that everybody that's watching now should take them, because you may not need them. So, for example, vitamin D. Vitamin D is the most, what I would say, important single supplement to take. Vitamin D is important for your immune system. It helps if you've got a high level of vitamin D, helps with COVID. Vitamin D has anti-cancer effects. It really is good for almost every aspect of health. So I would say vitamin D is a great supplement. I would also tell you that when we look at studies, most people have low vitamin D levels, and that's great. However, if you don't have a low vitamin D level, you shouldn't take vitamin D.
Yes.
So the answer to your question, my most important supplement for people is vitamin D. Do most people have low vitamin D? Yes. But if you're a person that doesn't have low vitamin D and you take vitamin D, you can really do damage. So go to your doctor and get a vitamin D level. So vitamin D is very important. The other thing that I think is important is fish oil. Fish oil is a great supplement because it's got omega-3 essential fatty acids. And again, like vitamin D, most of us are deficient in the good omega-3 essential fatty acids. What do omega-3 essential fatty acids do? Most importantly, they decrease inflammation. Now, inflammation, and I alluded to this earlier, inflammation is the underlying imbalance of most chronic illness that we see in the world. And that's true not just in the US, but also in the UAE. So you guys in this audience have a lot of inflammation, just like everywhere else in the world. And these omega-3 fats, which you get from fatty fish like salmon and sardines and mackerel, are anti-inflammatory. So if you have a high level of omega-3s in your blood, less Alzheimer's, less depression. We now know there was a study that came out this week about inflammation in the brain and suicide.
Wow.
So that's so important. Less heart disease, less high blood pressure. Cancer is an inflammatory disease. We've known this for years. Breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer are inflammatory diseases. So you want to take those omega-3s. Now, this is an area where it's very hard to cause a problem if you take a fish oil supplement. So unlike vitamin D, where there can be a problem, if you take a fish oil supplement, it shouldn't be a problem. And what I would say is if you don't know your levels, you take fish oil on the days you're not eating fish. So if you're having salmon one day, you don't need to take your fish oil either that day or the next day. That's just sort of an easy way to remember it. The other supplement that's good for people, almost everybody, is a probiotic. And this is a little bit controversial, but I believe that probiotics are good. Now, it has to be a good quality probiotic. In fact, all supplements have to be good quality because there's very little regulation internationally about the quality of supplements. It's really up to the company to ensure, and we use the phrase, what's on the label is in the capsule. So what that means is if they say you're getting 100 milligrams of vitamin C on the label, that when you actually look at the capsule, there's 100 milligrams of vitamin C there. And that, unfortunately, is not the case. So you have to get from a trusted company.
Of course. Yeah.
And the same is very true about probiotics, especially true about probiotics. Because probiotics, let's say on the label, they say, 4 billion, the measure they use is something called CFU, or colony forming units. So let's say it's 4 billion CFUs or 20 billion CFUs. You have to know that those bacteria don't die between the manufacturing date and when you buy it in the store and then when you put it in your body. And so the good companies actually do those tests and they say, well, this is your expiration date, and they keep it in the warehouse until the expiration date, and then they test it to make sure that the right number of bacteria are there. So it's very important that it be a trusted company. Some of them say that their probiotics have to be refrigerated. Some say they don't. And you have to trust the company when it says it doesn't have to be refrigerated, that it doesn't have to be refrigerated. So probiotics are good. Now, why do I say that? I say that because intestinal health, or what we call gut health, is one of the most important places of the body that needs to be healthy in order to have good overall health. And so we have a saying when we teach functional medicine, always start with the gut. And in the gut, the most abundant thing in the gut, more than the number of cells actually, is the number of bacteria. And there are trillions of bacteria, and we call the bacteria the microbiome. So the gut microbiome is so important for health. I'll go into that in a second, but I will tell you that it's not just the Institute for Functional Medicine or functional medicine practitioners that are saying this. Conventional doctors are also well aware of the importance of the gut microbiome. And there are departments in medical universities all over the world that study the gut microbiome. So this is nothing that is out there or on the edge. This is really cutting edge mainstream medicine right now, is to have an important microbiome. And not only that, but the entrepreneurial investment world is all over this as well. And there are so many new companies coming up constantly about assessing the health of the microbiome and then treating the microbiome. So I mentioned that to tell you the microbiome is important. And what's the best thing that you can do to help your microbiome? Well, yes, taking a probiotic is important, but it's also important, and I would tell you more important, about how you eat and what you eat. So fermented foods are so important for the microbiome, what we call prebiotics.
Yes.
Good sources of fiber. All of that is so important, beans, fiber, good fruits. These are foods for the healthy bacteria, which allows them to eat and to live. So, fermented yogurts, kefir, all of these things are so important. Kombucha. So you get those good bacteria through your foods. You eat those prebiotic foods, which have what we call allow short chain fatty acid production, which is the food for bacteria. And then what we do is we take a probiotic, and there's no harm with taking, up to 40 billion, CFUs. Depends on your digestion. Some people have a good reaction to them. Some people feel, bloated on probiotics. If that's the case, if you start feeling bloated after you eat, you may have something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is another very common functional medicine imbalance.
How do you test the SIBO? Because I've known so many people who suffered from it for years, but it's not something very common to be tested by regular traditional medicine.
It's not common. So, you can get a SIBO test. In the US, it's usually through a GI specialist. I don't know where you are, if SIBO tests are offered. But the common way to know if you have SIBO is if you have gas or bloating after you eat. So if you belch or your belly gets swollen after eating, you probably have SIBO. And, there are supplements that are good for that. There are nutritional changes, something called the low FODMAP diet, which is a diet that doesn't have the compounds that the unhealthy bacteria eat. So that way you're sort of diminishing their amount of food so that they can't continue to populate as much. And there are low FODMAP diets that you can get on the internet, and so on. So SIBO is very, very common. I would say almost, I don't know, a quarter of my new patients have SIBO. And it is very frustrating. What happens is people come in with gas and bloating. They don't get a SIBO test. They don't try a low FODMAP diet, and they end up being put on an antacid.
Yes, it's quite common, the antacid consumption in our part of the world.
And those antacids, I don't like them. I think there are certain people that absolutely need them, but antacids decrease the acid in the body, in the stomach, and that's a bad thing because you want your stomach to be acid.
Exactly.
That's how the enzymes work that allow you to digest your food. So when you decrease the acid, then you decrease the effectiveness of the enzymes, which means you're absorbing less nutrients. And so many of us in the functional medicine community believe that there are going to be many long-term health effects from people that are on these antacids long-term.
But what, okay, from being exposed to, a huge number of patients, what are the most common things that you see with your colleagues from the medications that are consumed by everyday man and woman for a long, long time, like the diabetes medications, the metformin, the atorvastatin, things that people all the time they're taking for years nonstop. So, what are the most common alerts that you would like to share with us tonight?
Well, in my experience, doctors that I see, meaning my patients, are given statins way too early and way too frequently. And one of the problems with statins is they lead to increased incidence of diabetes. And diabetes, if I had to pick one disease that I wanted to be controlled, it's diabetes. And so giving statins will increase diabetes, and I believe can make it harder to control. So I would use statins less frequently, and I do recommend statins, but I recommend them less frequently in my patients. The other thing that statins do is they inhibit an enzyme called HMG co-reductase, and that enzyme makes a compound called coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 is an antioxidant, but also important for the mitochondria and energy and muscles. And low CoQ10 has been associated with breast cancer. And so it's very important to give CoQ10 for patients that are taking statins, at least 100 milligrams a day, maybe even 200 milligrams a day of CoQ10 for patients that are on statins, because that's the cause of that statin-related muscle pain. And so what do I do for patients with, elevated cholesterol? The important thing is the diet, and it doesn't mean that people have to have a no-fat diet, but what they have to do ideally is less of a saturated fat diet. And so, people are talking about coconut oil, for example, as a good supplement for people because it's got some, medium chain triglycerides and things that can be good for the brain. And that's all true. So it can be good for the brain and bad for the heart. So staying away from a lot of coconut oil, staying away from a lot of ghee or butter, if you have elevated cholesterol. And normalizing blood sugar is so important. It's also important to normalize your thyroid, because if your thyroid is underactive, and that's very, very common, cholesterol goes up. So I have many cardiologists that I've seen that treat people with statins before they optimize thyroid function. So make sure the thyroid is performing perfectly. Again, the diet, which eliminates those, a lot of the saturated fat. And this is where, yes, you can have eggs and you can have some beef, but you don't want to have a lot of it, right? There are people that have this diet called the carnivore diet, where every day is, meat and fat. No, you don't do that if you've got elevated cholesterol. You just don't. We actually know that a vegan diet has been shown to reverse heart disease. And I know that elevated cholesterol is not the same as heart disease, but I'm just pointing out that nutrition is so important before you get put on a statin. And there are supplements like bergamot is a great supplement, before you need to take a statin.
Eye-opener. Every time I talk to you, it's an eye-opener. I don't want to take much of your time this time. There's going to be more times to discuss many things, because we still need to talk about, the test you do with the genes, and how do you assess many things based on
we have so much to talk about. I can't wait.
I wanted to introduce you tonight to all my followers, because I believe in you. I believe in the change that you can make in this world. And our part of the world is yet to be introduced to this kind of medicine. And I know, like you helped me, you'll be able to help many more. And I'm looking forward to our next session in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all the people in the audience for being here and listening. And I hope I've helped. Thank you.
I will get as many questions from them as possible. And next time the list will be much longer. Thank you so much, Joey.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.